All right. Good afternoon. My name is Alan, and on behalf of ALUCA, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar about trends in communications technology and how this translates to best practice use in the claims handling. On behalf of the ALUCA's Claims Group, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, From Phone Calls to Platforms, Rethinking Best Practice in Life Insurance Claims for a Multi-Generational Future. My name is Alan, and I'll be chairing today's session. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Also, a warm thank you to ALUCA's sponsors for their ongoing support, especially our Platinum and Gold sponsors. Before we dive in, I'd like to share what you can expect to take away from today's session. By the end of the webinar, you will have a clearer understanding of claims communication must evolve beyond traditional phone-based models, that multi-generations require tailored engagement strategies, that technology is already enabling new claims models, but the adoption must be practical. Our aim is to ensure you leave with practical insights you can apply in your day-to-day work. As with all ALUCA events, today's session is being recorded. You will receive one ALUCA customer care point, which will be used automatically added to your logbook for completion in your CPD record. And also a reminder that the CPD requirements have dropped from 40 to 30 this year. And now let's turn to today's topic. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker presenting all the way from London, Josh Padayachee. Thank you, Josh. Um, Josh is an actuary and the head of the Life and Health Digital Business Accelerator at Hannover based in London. In his role, he works with teams and partners across the globe to turn digital ideas into practical solutions that improve how life and health insurance actually works in the real world. He started his career in actuarial and analytics roles. Over time, he has also worked across pricing, experience studies, data, and digital transformation. Before moving to the UK, Josh was based in South Africa, where he led systems and R&D at Hannover focusing on areas like automated underwriting, data platforms, and insurer-facing digital solutions. Josh enjoys working at the intersection of people, processes, and technology, and is particularly interested in what it really takes to make digital change stick in insurance. His approach is grounded in practical experience, with a focus on solutions that can be implemented and scaled rather than just imagined. We are very lucky to have Josh sharing his insights and experience with us today. Thank you for taking the time, Josh.
Thank you, Alan. And thank you to ALUCA for inviting me to speak on this topic. Um, yeah. So welcome to the session, everybody. As Alan has mentioned, it's called From Phone Calls to Platforms, Rethinking Claims for a Multi-Generational Future. And the main idea I wanted to explore is quite simple, actually. Today's claimants will not behave in the same way as the claimants we see of tomorrow. For many years, claims interactions has been built around a fairly familiar model: a phone call, a form, a case manager, a sequence of evidence requests, and then a decision. That model still matters, especially in life and health claims, where the circumstances can be emotional, complex, or life-changing. But the claimant mix is changing. Baby boomers and Gen X still shape many claims interactions today. Over the next few years, millennials become more prominent and Gen Z becomes much more meaningful. That shifts expectations around speed, visibility, control, communication, and choice. So today is not really a technology talk. It is a claims interaction talk. It is about how claims leaders design experiences that work for customer bases we have today and the customer base we know is coming. I'll take you through the discussion in 5 different parts. First, we'll look at the changing claims landscape, why claims interactions is becoming more visible, more comparable, and more important as a trust signal. Second, we'll move into the generational shift, what today's claimants mix looks like, where it is moving, and how each generation tends to want to interact. Then we'll look at common friction points that undermine trust, silence, repetition, handoffs, and unclear ownership. Fourth, we'll move into the practical claims design and what choice-based claims actually means in operating terms. And finally, we'll close with a roadmap for claims leaders, what to do now, what to build next, and what the future-ready model looks like. The thread running through this whole session is this. Claims is not becoming less human, it is becoming more choice-based. So let's begin with the claims landscape. Before we get into generations, it's worth grounding ourselves in why this matters. Claims is no longer just an internal operational process. It is increasingly visible to customers, regulators, advisors, and the rest of the market. So this slide sets up the strategic shift that we see in the claims industry. Historically, many claims journeys were designed around a single front door. That front door was often the phone, sometimes emails, sometimes a paper-based or advisor-led process. And the assumption was that the insurer controlled the route, the sequence, and the pace. But the default claimant is changing. More claimants now expect some level of self-service, the ability to upload documents digitally, status visibility, and asynchronous updates. They do not necessarily want to call to ask, did you receive any form? Or what is happening now? They expect the process itself to tell them that. The key point is not that the phone disappears. It does not. The phone calls remain important, but phone first becomes a preference, not the assumed starting point for everybody. The strategic shift is therefore towards choice-based claims. One claim journey that works across phone, digital portals, apps, messaging, advisors, and assisted support grounded with the human interaction. Customers should be able to switch channels without restarting, repeating their details, or resubmitting documents, essentially being able to continue a journey through any of these platforms at any time. The risk for the insurer is an expectation gap. When customers expect visibility and control, but the process gives them silence and uncertainty, that gap shows up as avoidable, inbound calls, complaints, churn, reputational risk, and regulatory intervention. So the immediate challenge is practical. Fix acknowledgement speed, update the cadence with which you interact and notify, and what the ownership clarity seems to be throughout the claims process. Claims is where the insurance promise becomes real. It really is the business that we're in. Every policy should end in a claim. For many customers, claims is the only meaningful interaction they ever have with the insurer. They may not remember the underwriting process. They may not remember every feature in the policy wording, but they will remember what happened when they claimed. They remember whether they felt believed. They remember whether someone owned the process. They remember whether the next step was clear. They remember whether they had to chase. They remember whether the process felt fair, even when the decision was difficult or not really in their favor. That is why claims is the value moment. And importantly, the trust drivers are often within our control. Fast acknowledgement reduces anxiety. Plain language next steps reduce confusion. Clear ownership prevents people feeling lost in the system. And on the other hand, poor claims experiences quickly become risk events. Delays and handoffs can look unfair, even when the decision itself is technically correct. A customer may eventually receive the right outcome, but if the journey was opaque, repetitive, or emotionally tone deaf, trust has been damaged. So the claim function is not just there to assess liability or pay valid claims. It is there to preserve the trust at the point where the customer is most likely to need clarity and support. The second reason this matters is that claims performance is now much more visible. In Australia, APRA and ASIC, along with Money Smart comparison tools, allow customers and advisors to look at the claims paid, time taken, and the number of disputes that have been resolved. This means claims handling is not hidden in the back office anymore. It is part of how the market can assess performance. In New Zealand, the conduct regime also keeps customer outcomes and fairness under scrutiny. And across both markets, regulators are increasingly interested not only in the final decision, but in the journey, communication, timelines, fairness, vulnerability support, and the end-to-end ownership of the process. This is especially important in life and health claims because the customer does not experience the operating model in pieces. They do not think this delay sits with the claims committee, or this handoff sits with the administrator, or this part is with a medical provider. They experience one claim and one point of interaction. So the takeaway is this: manage end-to-end claimant time, not just the insurer decision time, as both of them go part and parcel and affect the overall impression of a client to the insurer. If the customer is waiting, they're waiting, regardless of which internal or external party currently holds the next action. And if they have to chase, repeat, or re-explain, they experience this as the insurer's process and not passing on the fault to a third party. The better approach is to design ownership and update across the full chain: insurer, advisor, provider, rehabilitation partner, medical assessor, and any other support network that's involved in the process. So now let's move on into the center of today's presentation, the generational shift. This is the part I want to make the most practical. The point is not to stereotype people by age. The point is to understand the different generations and how they tend to approach communication, control, digital tools, and human support, and what this means for the claims design. Today, many complex life and health claims are still shaped by baby boomers and Gen X. That makes sense. Death, disability, serious illness, long-term health events, and retirement-related protection often sits more heavily in older and midlife cohorts. Many of these journeys involve grief, vulnerability, uncertainty, and have many different partners which are involved: family members, advisors, doctors, and some of the rehabilitation partners which may be involved in the claims journey. That is why assisted personal support with the human touch still matters. A claims journey is not just paperwork. It can involve illness, loss, trauma, financial pressure, work disruption, family responsibilities, and difficult decisions. In those moments, clear ownership and easy access to a person can be deeply important. So when we talk about platforms and digital claims, we should be careful not to imply that the future is only self-service. It is not. The real issue is we must support today's complex claimant base while also preparing for tomorrow's expectations. In practical terms, maintain strong human support where it matters, but do not make every customer rely on phone calls and manual chasing for routine updates. This is the balancing act that we need to achieve. This is the key slide in the deck. The numbers here are illustrative and really portfolio dependent, but the direction is the main point of this. Today, baby boomers represent about 28% of claims populations. Gen X represent 35%, millennials at 29%, and Gen Z of 8%. In 5 years, however, the mix will shift. Baby boomers decline to around 18%, Gen X remains substantial at 31%, and millennials become the largest group within the claims cohort at 36%. And Gen Z almost doubles. So the message is not that older claimants disappear. They don't. In fact, baby boomers and Gen X remain very important, especially for complex, high-touch, and emotionally sensitive claims. But the center of gravity starts moving. Millennials become the largest interaction group. Gen Zs become too meaningful to treat as an edge case now. And that changes the default expectation of the claims journey. For baby boomers, the claims experience often needs to prioritize reassurance, clarity, and human interaction. For Gen X, the need is often control and efficiency. Give me a clear answer, keep momentum, do not waste my time, and do not make me chase. For millennials, visibility becomes the baseline. Let me start digitally, track progress, upload evidence, and escalate when I need help. For Gen Z, the expectations sharpen even further. Make it mobile, make it intuitive, confirm instantly, tell me what's going to happen next, and don't make me restart. The implication is captured at the bottom of the slide. Design for a younger default without removing high touch point support. That is the essence of choice-based claims. We are not replacing one default with another. We are designing a claims model that can flex across generations, claims types, emotional states, and support needs. This slide translates the generational shift into strategy. The answer is not digital first in this case, in a blunt sense, and it is not human first in a nostalgic sense. The answer is custom choice. That means phone, digital portals, applications, email, advisor, and provider channels should not operate as separate claims experiences. They should be different doors into the same claim. Digital is very powerful for structured tasks, such as logging claims, uploading documents, checking milestones, receiving updates, confirming receipts, and understanding what is needed next. But people remain essential for the harder moments: complexity in claims, vulnerability in our claimants, emotional distress, uncertainty, judgment, explanation, and exceptions. We can't apply a one-size-fits-all to these different processes. A choice-led claims model allows customers to begin in one channel and continue in another. A claimant might start online, upload medical evidence, receive SMSs, and then speak to a case manager when the claim becomes a bit more complex or they need some escalation or clarity. The important thing is that they do not restart, repeat, or lose context when speaking to different people within the process or using different methods of communicating via digital channels. So the goal is not to win a channel war. The goal is to design one journey with multiple interaction options. Let's start with baby boomers. The most important idea here is reassurance through ownership. Many boomers value human access, plain language updates, and confidence that someone competent is managing their claim. That does not mean they cannot or will not use digital tools. Many will, but when the claim is complex, emotional, or unfamiliar, human guidance becomes a trust builder. What breaks their trust? Being pushed into digital-only steps when guided support is needed, confusing forms, unclear responsibility across teams, not knowing who owns the claim, not knowing whether the information has been received, feeling like the insurer is hiding behind a process and not giving them the appropriate feedback. The design response to this is actually quite practical. Assign a named handler or visible case owner. Keep ownership clear at every step. Offer assisted digital completion rather than forced self-service. Keep paper as a fallback where appropriate. Enable a family member or advisor to help without restarting the claim. For this cohort, good claims design says, you are not alone in this. We know what happens next, and we will guide you through it. The message is valuable for everyone, but it is essentially important for high-touch, complex, or vulnerable claims. For Gen X, the theme is control and clarity. This group often sits in a very practical life stage. They may be balancing work, children, aging parents, debt, health responsibilities, and financial commitments. In a claim, they may not necessarily want a long conversation. They want competence, speed, and a clear next step. Well, they want an answer quickly, an owner who stays accountable for the claim, visible processes, fewer handoffs, fewer repeat requests, the ability to get something done and move on with the rest of their lives. What breaks their trust is uncertain callbacks, business hour bottlenecks, duplicate evidence requests, and handoffs where no one can explain who owns the next steps. The design response to this is to make the progress visible, and reduce wasted effort. Provide portal statuses with simple milestones and expected timelines. Offer callback windows rather than a vague promise to call back. Escalate warmly when complexity increases. Implement upload once. Use many evidence collection across the different parties. For Gen X, the message is, we will not waste your time. We will keep the momentum. You will know who owns this and what happens next. Millennials require a baseline of visibility. Many millennials are now in key protection years. Family formations, mortgages, debts, careers, health responsibilities, and financial planning. They're used to managing banking, travels, deliveries, healthcare, and many other services digitally. So when the claims journey requires paper-heavy steps, wet signatures, poor mobile design, or long periods of silence, it can feel unnecessarily outdated. What do they expect? The ability to start a claim on a mobile or web-based application, simple evidence upload, clear milestones, proactive updates, secure messaging, save and resume features when completing online forms, and a way to escalate to a person when the claim becomes more complex. What breaks their trust is silence between these steps. Poor mobile usability experience, repeated questions, and paper-heavy processes, and not knowing whether the claim is moving or not. The design response to this is to make self-service lodgement standards for routine tasks with e-signatures, secure uploads, milestone-triggered alerts, and clear status visibility. But again, this is not digital only. Millennials may start digitally, but want humans to help when the situation is emotional, contested, or complex. So the design principle is digital convenience with human support close by. Gen Z sharpens the same trend. For this group, mobile first is not a feature, it is often the default expectation. They expect short steps, simple prompts, instant confirmations, and clear what happens next messages. That does not mean they do not need empathy. They absolutely do. But empathy may need to be delivered in a way that feels accessible, fast, and easy to engage with. What does Gen Z expect? Mobile first claiming, short guided steps, plain language, and simple uploads, as well as instant receipt confirmations, rapid progress between their milestones, and a chat or callback escalation without restarting their process and re-entering information. Their trust is broken when they encounter jargon-heavy instructions, long forms, unclear next steps, phone queues, and handoffs that require them to restart the story. The design response is guided questions, plain language, visible next step prompts, and one-tap routines to help. The risk with Gen Z is that a journey that feels acceptable to an internal process owner may feel unnecessarily slow, vague, or fragmented to the customer. So the question becomes, if this were designed for a mobile native claimant, what would it still look like today? And would we need to make any changes? Now, this slide pulls together the generational comparison. For boomers, as I've mentioned before, guided human access remains central. Phone and advisors support matter. Emails can work as a backup to phone calls. Assisted completion is valuable where forms or portals become complex, particularly for complex claims and complex information being required. For Gen X, blended channels work well. They may use phone calls for hard questions, but want progress updates to be visible online. They expect SMS or email updates and friction-free document uploads. They want the channel to increase the speed and not to slow them down. For millennials and Gen Z, mobile-first expectations are stronger, and they want to start digitally, receive quick confirmations, track their progress, use messaging or self-service functionality, and escalate easily when needed. The point is not that every individual in the generation behaves the same. They don't. But there are enough differences in default expectations that a single fixed journey becomes too risky for us to employ as insurance professionals. So the claims model needs to support preference capture. At the start of the claim, we should be asking, how would you prefer us to contact you? Do you want SMS updates, email updates, a call, advisor involvement, or support person access? Are there any support needs we should be aware of to make the journey a bit easier for you? Choice-based claims start with understanding the person is not just a claim, but is actually a human being behind it. So now that we've looked at the generational expectations, let's look at the common friction points. These are the moments where trust breaks down, regardless of the generation within a claims process. There are three recurring friction points in claims: silence, repetition, and handoffs. Silence is powerful. When customers do not hear anything, they really assume everything is progressing smoothly. They often assume the claim is stuck, forgotten, or being treated unfairly. This is especially true in long claims. A long claim may be completely reasonable because the evidence is complex or because medical information is still outstanding. But if the customer does not understand what is happening, waiting becomes distrust. The second friction point is repetition. Duplicate document requests signal disorganization. Being asked for the same evidence or the same story across different teams feels like avoidable effort. It makes the customer question whether the insurer is in control or actually values the person and not just the claim. The third friction point is handoffs. Life and health claims often involve insurers, advisors, employers, medical providers, rehabilitation specialists, and sometimes their family members. Each handoff can be necessary, but if responsibility is unclear, the claimant experiences a maze, not knowing how to exit it or find the way home. The solution is not simple. The solution is not simply go faster. The solution is to reduce uncertainty. Even when the decision takes time, customers should know what has happened, what is outstanding, who owns the next step, and when they will hear again about the progress of their claims. I've mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's one of the guiding principles that I'll talk about. It's the concept of the door entering the claim. This is one of the most important operating principles here. Choice-based claims does not mean creating separate journeys for every channel. That would create much more complexity. Particularly, as I've mentioned, not every generation stereotype holds true for everybody in that generation. It means creating one case, one source of truth, and many doors into it. Customers should be able to start by phone, continue on a web-based portal, send evidence by upload, or via post if needed, receive updates via SMS, involve an advisor if they need, and to easily be able to escalate to a person without the case losing any context. That requires a single case file or at least a single case view. Evidence, notes, decisions, ownership, next steps, and communication preferences need to be visible across the channel. The principle here is continuity. Customers do not really care whether a process is internally split between claims operations, administrators, medical assessment, or third-party providers. They care whether the person helping them understands the history and can tell them what happens next. So the test for any channel strategy is this. When the claimant changes channel, does the insurer remember them? And can the insurer tell them what the next steps are? If the answer is no, it is not a choice, it is a fragmentation. Technology has an important role to play, but it should be framed correctly. The goal is not to add technology because it looks cool or modern. The goal is to reduce uncertainty, repetition, and avoidable delays. The most useful claims technology is often quite practical. These include secure uploads of documents, e-signatures, save and resume functionality for lodging a claim, document reuse across the process, life statuses in terms of milestones, event-driven updates, proactive reminders, and permission management for advisors or anybody who engages as a support structure within this. These tools build trust, they make progress visible and reduce effort. but technology should not replace support where support matters. Claims still require judgment, explanation, empathy, vulnerability handling, and human reassurance. The better framing is digital handles structures and repeatable tasks, people handled complexity and human moments. So when we talk about platforms, we should not imagine a cold digital-only platform. We should imagine an orchestrated claims journey where technology keeps the process visible and efficient, while humans remain available for the moments that care and judgment are required. So let's move on from the friction points to what good looks like. The next section is deliberately practical. These are the design moves that claims professionals can start applying without waiting for a complete transformation program to be implemented within their organizations. Modern claims done right has 3 characteristics. First, multiple entry points. One case. A customer should be able to start through any of their desired points, be it a phone call, via the web, or through a person. But behind the scenes, the claim should be coordinated as one case. Nothing should be re-entered unnecessarily. The second is visibility customers can feel and see. It is not enough that the claims teams know the progress and what's happening. Customers need visible milestones and event-based updates. They need to know what has been received, what is being reviewed, what is outstanding, and what's happening next. The third is that support networks are built in. Life and health claims often involve support people, family members, advisors, employers, medical providers, or rehabilitation partners. And good claims design recognizes that the claimant may not be acting alone. It creates safe, permission-based ways for the right people to help and where the right information can be shared. This is what modernization should mean in claims, not just faster processing. A more coordinated, visible, and supportive journey. This slide is the what can we do now slide. The first action is to simplify every request. Rewrite letters, emails, SMS messages, and screens in plain language. Every communication should answer, what are we asking for? Why do we need it? And what happens after you provide it? And then, who can help? The second action is to end the silence gap. Confirm receipt of documents immediately or a claims form immediately. Show expected milestones and the timings of this. Trigger SMS or email updates when milestones move or when action is needed. The third is to make help easy to access. Offer save and resume for digital tasks. Provide assisted completion for time-poor, stressed, or vulnerable claimants. Assign one accountable owner across insurer, administrator, and partners where possible, so that the journey seems seamless for the claimant. A very practical improvement is a single evidence checklist. Customers should not receive different document requirements from different parts of the ecosystem unless there's a clear reason. Another practical improvement is assisted digital. This is especially useful because it avoids the false choice of do it yourself online and wait on the phone. A claims specialist can support the customer throughout a digital journey without requiring them to start again. These are not futuristic ideas. They are immediate service design moves. To change claims experience, we need to measure the experience, not just the transaction. Cycle time matters, but it isn't enough. A claim can technically be within service standards and still feel poor if the customer experience is silent, repetitive, or displays unclear ownership. So the dashboard should include speed measures, visibility measures, and friction measures. Speed measures include time to first acknowledgement and time to first minimal human contact for complex cases. Visibility means include the percentage of claims where live status visibility and whether proactive update obligations are being met. Friction measures include duplicate document request rates, repeat contacts, complaints, disputes, and customer effort. One useful mindset is to measure the difference between Work is happening and the customer knows work is happening. That gap is often where avoidable inbound calls and complaints come from. For claims leaders, the question is not only did we decide the claim correctly, it is also did the claimant understand the journey, feel supported, and know what was happening. So I'm going to close the session off with a little bit of a roadmap. This is kind of a leadership view, how to sequence change so that claims models become more generationally aware and choice-based over time. The roadmap has three distinct horizons: now, next, and later. Now is about stabilizing the basics. I've mentioned this before, but simplifying letters, checklists, and next steps, make ownership explicit, especially across insurance provider coordination, offer assisted digital and support person access for vulnerable claimants. These actions improve trust quickly because they reduce uncertainty and effort from the claimant. Next is about making progress visible, introduce clear milestones, tracking and event-driven updates, enable upload once document handling to cut repeats and work or reworks, support seamless channel switching with callback scheduling and continuity. This is where the claims start to feel different to the customer. They no longer need to chase to know whether something is happening or not and have that information at their fingertips. Later is about building genuinely choice-based journeys. Segment claims by complexity, vulnerability, and customer preference. Design one case view across phone, digital portals, applications, advisors, and providers, and continuously tune cadence and handoffs as well as evidence rules using complaints and operational data as it filters through. The point is sequencing. Do not start with the most advanced technology. Start with clarity, ownership, and communication. Then add visibility. Then build more personal, integrated, and choice-based journeys. The future-ready claims model is not a single channel. It is an operating capability. One claim, many ways to interact, and clear support when it matters. Let me close with three messages. First, claims is always the trust test. Customers judge fairness through clarity, ownership, and timely updates. Transparency means that claims outcomes and delays are more visible than ever. So claims experience is not just an operational concern. It is a trust, conduct, and reputational concern. Second, the mix will keep shifting. Portfolios will differ. Some claims portfolios will skew to older ages for longer, especially where death, disability, and serious illness claims dominate. But the interaction share of younger cohorts will keep rising. Millennials become more central, and Gen Z becomes increasingly more meaningful. That means insurers should not design only for today's dominant claimant. They should design for a mixed base that is already changing. Third, trust plus choice wins. The future is not phone only. It is not digital only. It is a choice-based model where customers can use phone, digital advisor, assisted support, and other channels without repetition or restarts. The strong claim experience will combine empathy with control, human care where it matters, digital visibility where it helps, and continuing across the claims journey. So the final takeaway is this. Claims leaders need to design for the customer mix they have today and the one they know is coming tomorrow. That means one claim journey, many doors in, clear ownership, visible progress, and easy escalation to human support when it matters. Thank you very much for your time. These are just my contact details if anybody wants to contact afterwards, but I'm also very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Josh, for sharing these insights. Yeah, we do have some questions, about 15 minutes to get through as many as we can. So sometimes during sensitive claims, we might be under prolonged legal review or periods of surveillance that are quite sensitive and we can't really talk about externally. How can we use technology to build trust, promote visibility, and reinsurance in these situations when we're limited in the clarity we can provide?
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting question that because there are obviously some circumstances where we can't be as up to date or provide the feedback as and when it happens. But the key for the trust is that you've designed a process where you start building the trust early on. For example, if there's a legal review, it's not necessarily that that happens right at the start of the claims lodgement. So if
Mm.
you were able to build that trust up there, you have some buffer in at the later stages to inform them that there are more investigations happening.
Okay, thanks. Oh, this one's coming through. Not a question, but just want to say this was great, and I look forward to applying these principles in practice. So that's very nice. Um, okay, this one. Are there any risks in over digitalizing claims interactions, particularly for vulnerable customers?
Yes, so I think vulnerable customers are really somewhere where that we need to take a lot of concern and care. This is where the kind of combination of digital and human needs to happen. So even if you have a digital first process, if that's the way your organization is going, you really do need somebody that can support a person or a claimant through that journey, be it through helping them to complete the forms if you don't have a normal paper form, having them take the calls and listen and understand and be and show their empathy in those cases. That's really where the difference happens. I think one of the key takeaways out of what I was trying to get at today is digital should not be the only way that we interact. Um, every single generation, there are people who need a little bit of human interaction. It's just that the preference of the first door in is changing over time. But the human touch, I don't think will ever leave the claims realm.
Okay. Um, So a common perception, possibly overgeneralized here, is that Gen Z are particularly adverse to speaking over the phone. Is this belief supported by your observations?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that all of them are particularly averse to speaking over the phone. It's just that I think they have a natural preference for starting a journey digitally. And when it does come to the interaction over the phone, they want it to be at a convenient time for them. So having them be able to schedule that time and for that time to be kept is quite important. And again, if they've submitted all the information through all the different channels before, they expect that when they do take that call, that all that information is up at the front of the person speaking to them, and they know what the context is for them not to repeat it.
Okay. Yes. Um, so the anticipated rise in Gen Z customers over the next 5 years is very eye-opening. How might Gen Z and Gen Alpha, do you believe, might reshape the claims expectations over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
So I think I alluded to it a little bit in the presentation, but really the preference within the generations or the stereotypical preference is really to do those digital first channels. So that's kind of your first starting point for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. The expectation is that Gen Alpha comes in and they're going to want even more digitally first and ask even more stringent questions about, well, where's my claim? What can I see? Can I see where, who's making the decision at which point? And we probably need to start thinking about that as well.
Okay, thanks. Um, so this one that's come in, are these insights gained from UK, South African, or Australian data sources by Hannover Re? Is it limited to life claims engagements or other insurance and non-insurance sectors?
Mm. So these particular stats around what the populations look like were sourced from some information that was available for Australia and New Zealand, um, and it was more publicly available information. So that's where that comes from. And yeah,
Cheers. Um, Another one, excellent presentation. Do you have any global or international examples of where you are seeing success with digital claims? Equally, have you seen any less successful examples?
so I think in some markets, it's the let's change from the traditional approach to claims, and the one size fits all doesn't really work. So moving from the more paper-based to a completely digital journey. And as you can imagine, where you have a very, very, very complex case that somebody needs to upload lots and lots of information does not give the same result as being able to speak to somebody on the phone or having an advisor deal with you. Um, so those are definitely kinds of examples, and we see that across the world where people have rushed into just a digital first without actually considering what the other implications are, and those haven't been particularly successful. There's
Okay.
always going to be that human interaction that's needed. In some of the markets, there are these kind of policy administration systems slash um, insurance ecosystems that kind of consider what a true multi or omni-channel interaction would be. And that actually starts all across the journey from the underwriting all the way through the claim side. So on the claim side, it's somebody being able to send their documents through WhatsApp, for example, those being verified for authenticity and extracting relevant information, pre-populating reports and that are needed. And then when the customer engages, even though they've submitted it via WhatsApp, they can then say, hey, I want somebody to give me a call. And the agent would call them immediately and have all that information up um, at hand and deal with the claim from there. So being able to having the different doors in, yes, but being able to switch between them as often as you need is where we've seen some success.
Okay. So it's really, really need that smooth transition between channels. Um, so when we are, say, accommodating all these multi-generational preferences, how can we avoid people becoming overwhelmed with the number of interaction options available?
Mm. Yeah, so that's also a pretty good question. I think one thing that we need to know is need to actually know our cohorts quite well. So this means particularly what your demographics look like within your own business and understanding how they'd like to interact. The solution is not to go out and have this kind of multi-channel interaction model implemented within the next 1 or 2 months, years, even. It's to understand really how your client wants to be interacted with and then account for that. Of
Ah,
course, if you're targeting a different target market, you need to take other considerations, but that's really how you need to approach it.
okay. Thanks. Um, so how can we measure our success when evolving claims communication strategies?
So we need to keep it simple at first. I think that's really important. So we've got some metrics already that you would use in terms of what a successful claim would look like, and it's actually building on those. So even starting with just the time that it takes for a claim to be closed off is a good metric to start looking at. Looking at the number of times or interactions where a claimant needed to call in to to get information and whether that reduces over time. So you would notice that if somebody's really nervous about a claim and it's taking very long, there would be a lot more calls coming in. And should that number reduce over time because you've got some sort of a dashboard or you're sending out proactively the information to the client, that's another measure of success.
Cool. Thank you. Um, so we'll close it off there. So thanks for the so many great insights. Just to recap on the key takeaways from this session that we can all now apply. Firstly, to build trust, claims communication must evolve beyond traditional phone-based models to offer self-service and visibility in addition to interpersonal human support and reinsurance. Multi-generational claimants require tailored engagement strategies, and technology is already enabling new claims models, but the adoption must be practical and accommodate a wide range of preferences. On behalf of us all, many thanks to our speaker today, Josh Padayachee. On behalf of us all, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the session valuable and engaging.